There's a phrase you probably said today, maybe yesterday, maybe last week, a short sentence, simple, which seems harmless. And this phrase is blocking your money. It's not an exaggeration. It's not a metaphor. It is a real mechanism, studied, documented in texts that exist for more than 2,000 years and confirmed by modern psychology. And as long as you keep saying that phrase, you can work as much as you want. You can try as hard as you want. Money will keep slipping through your fingers. Stay here. Because what I'm going to reveal today is something that no one taught you, not even at school, not even at home, not even in the courses you've already taken. And when you understand, you'll look back and realize how much time you wasted without knowing it. I spent more than 4 decades immersed in ancient texts, the Torah, the Talmud, the writings of the wise men of Babylon, the sayings of the Stoic philosophers, the teachings of the great Phoenician merchants and the wisdom schools of ancient Egypt, not as a hobby, as a mission. Because from a young age I realized that the men who built real wealth were not necessarily the most intelligent, nor the hardest working, nor the ones with the most opportunities. They were the ones who spoke differently. They thought differently. And that difference started within. Today I will reveal what these texts teach about internal language and money, about the words you use with yourself and others, and how they build or destroy your relationship with prosperity. I will show 3 types of phrases that block wealth, and pay close attention to the second type. The second is the most treacherous, because it seems virtuous, it looks humble, it even seems spiritual, but it's destroying you financially. Before I start, let me describe something. You work, sometimes too much. At the end of the month, the account doesn't close the way it should, or it closes for a bit, or it doesn't close. You've had moments when things got better, and then they went back to the same place, as if there was an invisible ceiling, a limit you can never cross. You wonder why. Try to find the error. Try to fix the method, the strategy, the planning. But the problem is not in the method. The problem is in the language, in the way you talk about money, in the way you think about money, in the phrases you repeat automatically without realizing it every day of your life. Does this resonate with you? If so, continue here, because what I'm about to say now could change the trajectory of your financial life in ways that no spreadsheet ever could. The sages of the Talmud had an expression for this. They said that the tongue is the brush with which man paints his destiny. Have you been painting the right destiny? I'll tell you about the day I learned this. I was 32 years old. I was in a difficult period. I had set up a small business, worked for months, and things just weren't going well. The income wasn't coming. Customers didn't show up. The bills piled up. One day I went to visit an old man, a man who had mentored my father. He was over 80 years old, had built and lost and rebuilt a fortune twice in his life, and he had that calm in his eyes that only comes from someone who truly understands something profound about existence. I sat in front of him and began to describe my situation, and he listened to me in silence. When I finished, he didn't ask me about the deal. He didn't ask me about the numbers. He didn't ask me to see the planning. He asked me just one thing. What do you say when someone asks you how things are? I was confused by the question. I replied, I tell the truth. I say it's difficult, that money is short, that things are not going well. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, you just showed me the problem. It's not in your customers. It's not in your product. It's in your mouth. It's in what you declare about yourself and your life, every day to everyone who asks. I had no answer. He continued, there is a law older than any finance book, a law that the Phoenician merchants knew, that the builders of the temple knew, that the great sages of all traditions knew. The law is this: you don't attract what you want. You attract what you declare. And you, my son, have declared poverty every day. That conversation lasted another 2 hours, and I left there different. Not because he gave me a technique, not because he taught me a strategy, but because he showed me something I had never examined. The language I used automatically, without thinking, was constructing a reality that I didn't want to live. And that day changed everything. Now I need to break something with you, a belief that almost everyone carries, which seems obvious, which even seems virtuous. The belief is this: being honest about your financial situation is a sign of humility and responsibility. Sounds right, doesn't it? It's a trap. I'm not telling you to lie. I'm not saying to pretend everything is fine when it's not. I'm saying something much more precise. There is a huge difference between recognizing a reality and declaring an identity. When you say, I don't have money, you're not describing a moment. You're declaring who you are. When you say, I can never save money, you are not reporting a history. You're signing a contract with yourself. When you say money is hard for me, you're not being realistic. You are being a prophet of your own limitation. And the nervous system does not distinguish memory from reality. It does not distinguish belief from fact. He listens to what you declare and builds the world around it. Medieval rabbinic texts called this the Kiddush Hashem of language, sanctification through the word. The idea that what you name, you summon. This is not empty mysticism. It's neuroscience described in ancient language. And you, without realizing it, have been summoning scarcity every day of your life. First type of phrase that blocks wealth, the declaration of poor identity. These are phrases that transform a temporary circumstance into a permanent identity. Examples: I'm not from a rich family. Money is not for me. I've never been good with money. I'm more spiritual than material. It seems like I wasn't born to be rich. Each of these phrases, said once, twice, 100 times, becomes installed as programming in the deepest system of your mind. And what is installed there governs your choices without you realizing it. You don't realize it, but when an opportunity appears, something inside you sabotages it, not out of weakness, for consistency, because your internal system is being consistent with what you declared it to be. How do people go wrong here? They believe that these phrases are just descriptions. These are just ways of talking. They are just expressions. They are not. Words have physical weight on the nervous system. Every time you say them, you activate specific neural networks. You reinforce standards. You solidify beliefs. The consequence is invisible in the short term and devastating in the long term. It's like a crack in a wall. On the first day, it seems like nothing. In 10 years, the wall collapses. How to fix? Start looking at your financial identity phrases, not to judge yourself, to see. Every time you say something about money that starts with I am, or I never, or I always, pause, examine. Ask yourself, is this a statement of identity or a description of a moment? Replace. Instead of I can never save money, say, so far I haven't developed this habit yet, but I'm developing. The difference seems small, the impact is profound, because you are moving from a fixed identity to a moving identity, and a moving identity can reach places that a fixed identity never will. The wise men said, the man who says, I can't close the door, the man who says, I still can't leave the door ajar, and through the half-open doors, light enters. Second type of phrase that blocks wealth. And here is the most insidious of all, false financial humility. These are phrases that seem like virtue, that look like spirituality, that seem like wisdom, and they are poison. Examples: money isn't everything. I'd rather be poor and honest than rich and dishonest. I don't care about money. I just want to be happy. Money doesn't bring happiness. Whoever runs after money loses what matters. Listen carefully. None of these phrases are completely false. Money really isn't everything. Money doesn't really guarantee happiness alone. But there's a huge difference between a philosophical truth and a statement you use to protect yourself from fear. Because most people who say these phrases don't say them out of deep wisdom. He says them out of fear. Fear of trying and failing. Fear of being judged. Fear of wanting and not getting it. Fear of appearing greedy. And then one dresses fear in clothes of virtue. She says she doesn't care about money and convinces herself that this is spirituality, but it's an escape. Medieval sages had a precise distinction for this. They called it anava shel sheker, false humility. And they said it was more dangerous than open arrogance, because the arrogance at least is visible. It can be confronted, it can be corrected. False humility hides under the appearance of virtue, and that's why it's never examined. It is never corrected. It sits there, operating in the dark, silently sabotaging. This is where most fail. How do people go wrong here? They build a spiritual identity around the rejection of money. And so any move toward prosperity feels like a betrayal of that identity. The person cannot charge a fair price for their work, because charging feels like greed. The person cannot invest. Put that investing seems like materialism. The person cannot ask for a raise, because asking seems like excessive ambition. And then you become stagnant, convinced that you're being virtuous, while you watch life pass you by. The consequence is devastating and silent. A person reaches the age of 50 with a destroyed financial life, and still believing that this is a sign of spiritual superiority. It is not. It is the result of a fear that has never been faced. How to fix? Here, the ancient teaching is accurate. There is a principle in the texts called pikwach nefesh, the preservation of life, the idea that taking care of yourself, your health, your stability, your prosperity, is not selfish. It is a sacred responsibility. A man who doesn't take care of himself can't take care of anyone else. A family without financial stability cannot contribute to the community. A person who rejects prosperity out of false humility is not being more spiritual. It's being less useful. Money, in ancient texts, was never treated as an enemy of spirituality. It was treated as a tool, like responsibility, as a resource that, in the right hands, builds families, communities, legacies. The problem was never money. The problem has always been their relationship with him. Start examining your false humility phrases. Every time you say money isn't important, ask yourself honestly, am I saying this because I genuinely believe it, or because I'm afraid of wanting it and not getting it? The answer will reveal a lot about you. Third type of phrase that blocks wealth: the language of chronic scarcity. These are phrases you say every day, in normal conversations, about normal situations. And they install, brick by brick, a scarcity mentality that governs all their financial decisions. Examples: it's too expensive. I don't have money for that. This is not for me. I'll leave it for when I have more money. Money disappears from my hand. It's barely enough to pay the bills. There's never anything left. These phrases just seem like descriptions of reality. They just seem like communication. But they are much more than that. Every time you say it's too expensive, you're not just describing a price. You're declaring that resources are limited, scarce, and inaccessible to you. Every time you say there is never anything left, you're signing an agreement with scarcity. Every time you say that's not for me, you're drawing the limits of your own life. And these limits, drawn word by word, day after day, become the walls of a prison that you built yourself. You don't realize it, but scarcity language creates a perceptual filter. When you deeply believe that there is never anything left, your brain starts looking for evidence to confirm this. Ignore the opportunities that appear. You don't see the possibilities. Closes to the exits. Neuroscientists call this confirmation bias. Ancient texts called it ayin ra, the evil eye, the perspective that only sees the negative and therefore attracts it. How do people go wrong here? They believe they are being realistic, that talking about financial difficulties is honesty, that not talking would be denial. But there is a difference between processing a hardship and declaring an identity of hardship. You can acknowledge that this month is difficult without declaring your life difficult. You can notice that a product is beyond your budget now without declaring that good things are never affordable for you. The difference is in the verb tense, in scope, in tone. The consequence of chronic scarcity language is a lifetime of barely enough to survive. Never enough to build, never enough to grow. Because the internal system has been trained to keep you exactly at your vocabulary level. How to fix? It's not about pretending that reality is different from what it is. It's about choosing words that keep the door open. Instead of, I don't have the money for this, try saying, it's not the time for this yet, but I'm building it. Instead of it being too expensive, try it. It's not in my budget yet, but I'll check what I can do. Instead of never having anything left over, try this. I'm learning to redirect what comes my way. Each substitution seems small. The accumulated effect is transformative, because you're changing the filter through which your mind processes the world. And when the filter changes, what you see changes, and when what you see changes, your choices change. And when the choices change, the results change. The wise men said, change your tongue and you will change your path. It's not poetry, it's instruction. I'm going to talk about something that few understand. An invisible law that governs the relationship between language and prosperity. Greek philosophers called them logos, the word as a creative force. The idea that language doesn't just describe reality, it participates in the creation of reality. Kabbalists called it the uncle, letters as energy, the belief that each word carries a vibration that reorganizes the world around whoever speaks it. The Stoics called it hegemonikon, the inner ruler, the part of the mind that, when trained with the right words, governs emotions, decisions, and results. Completely different traditions, different continents, different times, all reaching the same conclusion. Language is not passive. Language is active. Language creates. And modern psychology, after centuries of research, has arrived at the same place. What you say to yourself, repeatedly, becomes belief. What becomes belief governs behavior. What governs behavior determines outcome. It's a cycle, and it can turn for you or against you. Most people spend their entire lives with this cycle working against them without realizing it, without ever examining the words that are at the root of everything. Think of a seed. You can have the best soil in the world, the best water, the best climate. But if the seed is from a plant that doesn't produce fruit, you will grow a lot and harvest nothing. Language is the seed. And you choose, every day, which seed to plant. Poor identity phrases produce poor identity. Phrases of false humility produce financial paralysis. Phrases of chronic scarcity produce a life of chronic scarcity. But the reverse is also true. And that's what I'm going to show you now. If you apply what I'm going to reveal in the next few minutes, in the next few weeks, you will notice something. Not necessarily in the bank balance immediately, but in something that precedes the bank balance. You will notice a change in the way you perceive opportunities. a change in the courage you feel to make financial decisions, a shift in the energy with which you approach work, business, and money. And over time, the balance reflects this change, because the bank balance is always the last to change. The first thing to change is the language. Then comes belief, then the behavior, then the result. The wise men said that transformation begins where no one sees it. It starts within. It starts with the word. And if you change the word, it changes everything that comes after it. I will give you concrete practices, simple, that you can start today. First practice, the language inventory. For the next 7 days, pay attention to every sentence you say about money, not to punish yourself, to see. Every sentence that starts with, I never, I always, I can't, I don't have. Money's difficult, I'm not from family, or variations of these phrases. Write it down. At the end of the week, you will have a map in your hands, an accurate map of the seeds you have planted, and this map will reveal more about your financial life than any bank statement. The sages called this practice cheshbon ha-dibur, speech accountability. It was considered as important as accountability for actions, because they understood that actions come from words. Words are born from thoughts, and thoughts can be reorganized by conscious language. Second practice, systematic replacement. For each blocking phrase you identify, create a replacement phrase. The replacement phrase need not be an exaggerated and false statement. I'm not telling you to repeat, I'm a millionaire, when you're not. I'm saying replace closing with opening. Fixed identity for moving identity. Concrete examples. I never have money. Come on. I'm learning to build my relationship with money. Money is not for me. Come on. I'm still developing my ability to generate and save wealth. I'm not good with money. Turn around. I'm becoming someone who understands and respects money. I can't charge what my work is worth. Turn around. I'm learning to recognize and communicate the value of what I do. Each replacement is a brick, one brick at a time. A new language built with intention that replaces the old language installed without your permission. Third practice, the ritual of the intentional word. This comes directly from the Kabbalistic teachings on Kavana. The intention behind the word, once a day, in the morning preferably, state out loud 3 statements about your relationship with money. There is no magic formula, but they need to have 3 characteristics. They need to be in the present, not in the future. I won't be, but I am someone who is building. They need to be specific. I don't want to be rich, but I'm developing the habit of saving 10% of what comes in. They need to be yours, written by you, with words that resonate with you, that feel true to you. Doing this for 30 days straight will feel strange for the first few days. It will look artificial. It will seem like it doesn't work. Continue, because what is happening is not immediately visible. You are reprogramming patterns that have been installed for years. This doesn't change in a day, but it changes. And when it starts to change, it changes with force. Fourth practice, the mouth guard in conversations. This is the most difficult and the most powerful. Start noticing what you say about money in everyday conversations. When someone asks how things are, you don't have to lie, but you can choose what to emphasize instead of, it's hard, it's short, it's tight. Try it. I'm working on some important changes, or things are moving, or simply, I'm fine, thank you. It's not denial, it's choice. It's the choice not to plant seeds of scarcity in every conversation. Don't reinforce the narrative that doesn't serve you. The old man told me something I never forgot. He said, every time you describe your poverty to someone who can't help you out of it, you plant the seed twice, once in their mind, once in yours. Be judicious with what you plant. Before I close, I want something from you, not a like, not a subscription. Although both will help me continue bringing these teachings to more people, I want a commitment. If what I said today reached you, if you recognized at least one of these blocking phrases in your own vocabulary, write in the comments, I choose my words, I choose my prosperity. It's not just a comment, it's a statement. It is the beginning of a practice. It is the first brick of a new language. The sages believe that words spoken with intention carry different weight than words spoken out of habit. When you write this sentence in the comments, write with intention. Read what you wrote. Feel the weight of it. And then read the comments of others who wrote the same, because there is something powerful about knowing that you are not alone in this transformation. Right, I choose my words, I choose my prosperity. In the oldest texts I studied, there's an idea that cuts across all traditions. The idea that humans are the only animals that can reinvent themselves through words. That while a lion will always be a lion and a stone will always be a stone, human beings can change what they are by changing what they declare to be. This is the greatest freedom there is, and also the greatest responsibility. Because if you have the power to build with language, you also have the power to destroy, and most people use this power against themselves, every day, without realizing it. Today you noticed. Today you saw the phrases. You recognized the patterns. You understand the mechanism. What you do with it is your choice. You can leave here and keep saying the same words, planting the same seeds, reaping the same results, or you can start today with one sentence, with a replacement, with a different statement. You don't need to change everything at once. You need to change a word, then another, brick by brick, word for word, until the language that comes out of you is the language of someone who builds, that preserves, that grows, that prospers. This person already exists within you. She's just waiting for you to start calling her by the right name. The tongue is the brush, the destination is the screen, and the brush is in your hands.